Hi, I'm Tracy, and I'd like to share with you a video of, what's been coming up for me and what's been very powerful when it comes to my own personal development. So this video is going to be about healing codependency. It's been a very, very huge journey for me to heal codependency, and the other piece is identity dissociation disorder, or having multiple personalities. And it's honestly being in recovery of multiple personas and feeling kind of dissociated and then being codependent has been extremely difficult. And that was the core of my health issues before. So at this time, I don't have any health issues. But before, I definitely suffered a lot of health issues because of the narcissistic abuse that I have been subjected to. I was very afraid, extremely afraid to speak up. I always did, and I've gotten to this point because I have spoken up because of just my willingness to always speak up. It's been met with a lot of violence or just unsafety. I felt very emotionally and physically unsafe and very dependent in all ways and pretty much in all aspects of my life. And I think that many of us are. I feel that it's definitely a journey of re-owning who you are. And I think many of us, we kind of betray ourselves to some degree to be in a relationship, to work at a job we don't like. And I think the stronger the betrayal and the more fearful we are of being ourselves, that's when we actually run into health issues. So I feel like a lot of my personas have made me survive the world. I think the greatest persona that I had in many ways, I'm actually just realizing this right now, is my healing persona. I've always identified with being a healer. And the thing is, being overly identifying with some aspect is in a way sufferable. And I've also, I've had an identity of being a nurse, and I've had an identity of being a therapist. And my internal struggle, as I was posting a lot of these videos before, is being lost in those identities. I don't know if it was obvious or not, but I was definitely, I knew what I was saying, but I was getting lost in them. And yeah, so right now I feel like the healing, a lot of my older videos, the healing was talking for me. It was coming through, or parts of me, the educator, because I do have a background in being an educator, like a nurse educator, therapist, or nurse. That part of me would talk, and I would literally get lost in that persona. And so the person that's talking right now, it's like so insane that just recently I've been able to just work with all of my personas instead of getting too lost in them. Anyways, I'm sorry, I'm trying to look at the camera, but when I'm like really like feeling things out, I actually like to look up, or I like to do that. So I feel like this video is probably the first video where I feel like I'm myself without falling into parts of myself. It feels really good. It feels amazing. It's been a journey. I've spent like the last 8 years of my life healing dissociative identity and multiple personality and codependency, along with the health issues. But the health issues came because those were like very amplified. And so I'm in recovery of that, and I feel like I'm ready to have more real conversations about what I went through in healing my health. I feel like I was getting so lost in all the things, even though like I've had some really great comments from you guys about, you know, how my content has been helpful. I didn't recognize that I was getting lost in being a healer. It's probably the greatest identity, I think the therapist healer is the greatest identity that I've gotten lost in. Like, I'm a healer, and I do healing work, and like, I always knew that, you know, to heal the world, heal yourself. But I mean, I said it, but like, did I really know what that meant on a deeper level? And I go back to it, but really it is, you know, I need to share the things that were very healing for me, and share the things that I have also awakened to, like helping others, helping clients, and sort of the miracle that we share in the moment. I think that's the most important thing, you know. And I do feel that this is, and I'm gonna dispel this for a second, is that as a nurse, and I'm not just talking about myself, but many nurses that I've worked with, there is like this control dynamic. There's this controlling person and this helpless person, which is the patient or the client. And it's that actual dynamic that keeps people sick. And I have helped people recently with different chronic illnesses, one of the heavier ones being Parkinson's. And I saw a huge part of that being in the dynamic in the family is one person is super worried and one person is super helpless and one person is trying to like control and help the other person. So a lot of this work that I'm doing, it is about healing relationship dynamics. It is about healing like the codependency. And I think one of the greatest struggles that I have had is the codependency with what I'm saying. And so I kind of fall into being a nurse or an educator or a therapist or a healer when I'm talking. I'm actually not any, like, that's just parts of my personality, and that I've created identity from pain. Like, from pain and from healing, I've become in my profession from nurse to like a therapist. And I've identified with being a healer. I think healers actually have the greatest wounds. And if we identify hard with being a healer, that's how great the wounds are. And now that I can see that, I've detached from being a healer. But that doesn't mean I'm not there in my professional role to help people. But in my development, that's what I've noticed. So I'm gonna do this thing for a while where I show up on video every single day, and I'm gonna post in reflection of all of my identities. I can call it Identity Dissociative Disorder and Multiple Personality Recovery. I mean, in the psych world, that's what we call it. But I feel that when anyone's going on a spiritual journey, like one of the first books that I've read was The Wise Heart. And a lot of it is it's a spiritual practice to not identify with things so hard. It's a spiritual practice to shed the ego of all the identities. There's the ego identity, right? There's just so many egos going on. The healer has an ego. The different personalities have an ego. And I got lost in those egos as I was doing it. I think this is like one of the first videos that I've created that I'm not getting lost in some identity. And I think like one of the greater things is like when we're trying to survive, we adopt a certain identity. And I think that being like a new entrepreneur, before I was adopting a sales identity or like an entrepreneur identity. But I feel like I'm not here to do that. I'm just here to be real, and that's actually what's gonna heal me, and that's what's gonna heal all of us, is to be real. And I've always like said, I want to be real. I gotta feel and be real. Yes, I was feeling, processing like crazy for the last so many years, especially for the last 8 years. But I'm like processing on a different level now. I'm processing me actually like I don't identify so hard with all these parts of me anymore. I'm not like I'm a healer. I'm a healer. I'm a therapist. I'm a nurse. I'm an artist. I'm a poet. All these things were birthed from so much pain that I've been in. Being like a shattered soul before. And, that's just coming out of, having these health issues, having like such a strong co-addiction and codependent relationship with my family and my previous lovers that didn't work out, by the way. And I'd like to actually talk about it. Like, I feel like I can now. I've written poetry about it, and I want to refer to the art that I've created to just share with you my journey, because that's going to be healing for me. And that's going to be most real for me, is that I'm not identifying so hard with being a healer anymore, and like so hard with being an educator and teaching you how to heal. I think the most humble thing I can do is now share and be like, not get lost in my personalities, but share, this is what I went through. And I know that my videos talk about that, but like I was getting lost in that. I was being lost in being an empath, being lost in like the feeling of things. Like I was so into my feelings and into these personas, I was suffering so much. And I was so heavily attached to my family, to guys, that the trauma of all of that, it was really intense. And just the whole power struggle, the feeling helpless and having someone help me, and just the codependency, just caring so much and falling into all these personalities. And I think the biggest one, to be honest with you, is I cared so much about what people think about me. I cared so much about like what I'd be posting, as much as maybe it doesn't look like it, but that's because I was falling into different personalities. But I have a new mission now, is to show up, just to show up. What am I feeling today? Like how am I owning myself a little bit better? And that's the best thing I can do for me and So if you'd like to follow my journey of healing for the last 8 years, yeah, please support me in sharing my truth with you, because that's really all I can do. It's been very revelating. It's been revelating, and I just feel, wow. I've been watching, okay, so another thing. I've been watching Grace and Frankie on Netflix, and it's such a hilarious show, honestly, because like Frankie is like the healer in that show. And I identify with her, like I actually relate to her, like just parts of her personality. It's just hilarious. Anyways, where was I going with that? Yeah, it's just crazy. Like, you know, when you are like being a nurse and then being a therapist and then being whatever identity that I am, poet, I put so much, I was so split in all of them that I'm like, what is going on here? Like, you know, I would just go into this person, and I also have a logical side to me, which I've hated during the healing journey. I've hated for so long, but I just feel like I'm also just coming out of that too. I'm also just, there is a part of me that is I have a very strong logic, but I've had the worst relationship with that part of myself. See how like all these personalities are coming together. It's because I've had a very bad, it's because of who I became and how much I've rejected my emotional self being logical, because that's how I survived. That's how I survived school. I was just like this academic person. And I just got lost into being, you know, just getting mostly straight A's and just being that identity. And it was a very painful identity. I had a lot of anxiety throughout school. So yeah, being a nurse, I'm going to say this, okay? Is that being a nurse isn't, just because I'm a nurse, yeah, I know things for sure, but being a nurse doesn't necessarily heal. It's actually one of the most painful professions to be in. And I think it's about dispelling what it means to be a nurse, like the deeper reason. There's like power struggle. There's a power struggle with the hierarchy of the healthcare system, of doctors, of PSWs, of patients. There's so much physical control and restraints with drugs and this whole helpless control thing. And like, I mean, it's not just me. Like when I was working before, like nurses would tell me, it's like, oh yeah, I'm so controlling. I'm just like, and then you have that control over patients, and then patients are helpless. It's that state, that's the emotional dynamic, and that's the emotional dynamic that needs to heal, is that. So being a nurse doesn't necessarily make me know anything. I think the only thing that's actually been helpful in being a nurse is that when I did like my master's, I did learn more about the holistic stuff. And then when I went into end of life care, that's when I became like more spiritual and more, you know, I went on this like spiritual healing journey. But then again, it's like you have spiritual identity and then you have healer's identity, and oh my God, it's insane. Anyways, that's all. That's how I'm gonna show up today. If you have any questions, anything you'd like to share with me about your journey, or anything you're curious about with my journey, feel free to comment, and I can't wait to continue this conversation.